Welcome to Midnight Story. When the night falls silent and shadows grow longer, this is where horror and mystery begin. Real stories, urban legends, secrets never told. Be prepared, because something unseen might be watching you. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and of course subscribe, so you never miss the next terrifying tale. Because here, every midnight has a story. At midnight, I discovered the tattered journal hidden beneath a loose floorboard in my grandmother's abandoned house. Its pages were brittle, stained with something dark and unrecognizable. The first entry was dated exactly 10 years ago, recounting a woman's descent into a ritual so ancient and forbidden that even her name was whispered only in terror. As I read her trembling words, "They call me the devil's Satisfier." A cold chill bit at my spine. The wind howled outside as if echoing her confession, and I realized this was not fiction. It was a confession of a soul already damned. Inside the journal was a photograph of a woman with hollow eyes and tangled hair. She wore a crimson dress splattered with mud and something darker. I studied her face in the dim lamplight, an unsettling mix of defiance and despair. Her lips seemed frozen in a silent scream. Below the image, scribbled in ink that looked almost black, was her name, Ratna Prameswari. The entry described how she had been found wandering at the edge of the forest at exactly midnight, babbling about the voice that promised everything. I shivered, sensing her urgency, her fear. There was no date under the photograph, only a warning. Do not trust what you see at night. Ratna's words spoke of a man. No, a presence, who visited her at the stroke of midnight. He whispered promises of power, of granting her deepest desires, but at a terrible price. She wrote of experiencing warmth in her bones when he touched her hand, and of seeing a radiant figure that melted into shadows. Although she claimed to know nothing about the occult, her writing detailed obscure chants and strange symbols she'd scratched into her bedroom floor with trembling hands. The final lines of this entry read, "I did it for love, but I see now that love was never mine to give." On the night of her first ritual, Ratna described how the air grew heavy and still. The moon hid behind clouds, plunging her room into darkness illuminated only by a lone candle. She recited the words she didn't understand, and at the last syllable, the candle flickered out. In the pitch black, she felt a breath against her neck and heard a voice murmur, "Satisfy me." Her panic turned to perverse fascination. She obeyed. In that moment, something in her changed. Her reflection in the mirror looked back with smoky eyes, as though a second face peered behind her own. Ratna's entries grew more fragmented after that first encounter. She spoke of waking each morning exhausted, her body aching as if bruised. Yet, her eyes looked sharper, her skin paler, her mood obsessive. Shadows moved differently around her. They twisted at angles that made no sense. She wrote of seeing the presence in broad daylight, lurking just beyond her vision. Sometimes in mirrors, sometimes in corners. One entry ended abruptly. "Last night, I gave him my blood. I cannot stop him. He demands flesh next." My heart pounded. Who or what demanded flesh? And why had Ratna complied? 4 months later, Ratna's handwriting changed. Wavy, unstable. She recounted how villagers began to whisper of missing livestock. Then animals found mutilated, drained of blood. Fear gripped her. The presence urged her on. She wrote that her reflection no longer resembled her own, that she had nightmares in which she devoured people's screams. The final entry in this section simply read, "They took him away, but he will return. I am nothing without him." The date was smudged. A sense of hopelessness bled from the page. Then, blank pages followed. Had she been silenced? Or had she chosen to stop writing? I traveled to Ratna's hometown to verify the rumors. The village was small, nestled on the outskirts of a dense forest that locals avoided after dusk. They spoke in hushed tones of a beautiful young woman who danced beneath the moon and disappeared. Some elders claimed her family had been cursed. Others said her spirit roamed the forest, luring unsuspecting travelers to their doom. No one would show me her family home. When I asked about the journal, heads shook. People looked away. On my way back, a hunched old woman called after me. "Beware the midnight promise. Once you call him, he is yours." Another section of Ratna's journal reappeared, tucked between old pages. This entry detailed a clandestine midnight gathering in the forest clearing, where villagers donned masks carved like demon faces. Ratna described feeling compelled to join them, drawn by a sound like distant chanting. They circled an altar draped in black cloth, its surface stained with dark smears. In hushed voices, they sang a dirge that Ratna transcribed phonetically. She wrote, "When the final note died, the presence rose from the altar, a figure in flame and darkness. He chose me to be his bride." Her terror was palpable. She ended the entry with the words, "It is too late to turn back." In the following entry, Ratna described waking with a burn-shaped mark on her wrist, an inverted horned skull that smoldered like embers. It pulsed as if alive. She tried to wash it off, but it remained. Over the next days, the mark grew, creeping up her arm in twisted vines of dark veins. She confessed her shame, begging for forgiveness she didn't believe she deserved. She said that at night the mark whispered, urging her to find new offerings. I closed the journal, hands trembling. How could a wound speak? Yet the fever in her writing felt too real to ignore. Ratna's hand began to tremble so violently that her cursive became nearly illegible. She described strangers, tall, gaunt figures clad in black cloaks, arriving at her door at midnight. They never spoke but gestured toward the forest. She followed them, entranced. In the depths of ancient teak trees, she found altars carved into living wood, stained with old blood. The figures guided her through rituals, urging her to lick the blood, sing the name, sacrifice the innocent. Each time she resisted, they pressed. She noted, "I taste copper on my tongue. I see the world from his eyes. I am his instrument." Her final words, "I cannot tell where I end and he begins." A sudden entry, jotted down almost as a whisper, began, "He spoke to me tonight through the wind." She wrote of hearing her name carried on an icy breeze at exactly midnight, even inside walls. The whispers promised her strength beyond mortal limits, everlasting youth, beauty beyond compare, if she gave herself completely. Ratna confessed to trembling, torn between horror and desire. She tried to seal her windows, block her ears, but the wind found its way. I leaned closer, drawn to her words, feeling the same cold chill she described. On the page, she repeated over and over, "I promised I would never let go." In a panic, Ratna recorded how her neighbors avoided her. Rumors spread of lights flickering in her home at odd hours, of screams carried on the wind. One night, she wrote, a group of strangers wielding torches surrounded her house. They pounded on her door, chanting her name. Terrified, she fled through the back exit, crashing through the overgrown garden. She felt them on her heels, shadows slipping between trees, their chanting growing louder. She stumbled, falling into a mud pit at the forest's edge. Even as she lay dizzy, she swore she felt something gently lift her and carry her deeper into darkness. Her writing stops abruptly. The next entries aren't in Ratna's hand, but belong to a stranger named Adi, who claimed he witnessed her last moments. He wrote that, on a stormy night, he saw Ratna standing beneath a gnarled banyan tree, arms outstretched, chanting an incantation. Her eyes blazed with an otherworldly light. Suddenly, the ground split open, revealing a swirling vortex of red and black light. Adi ran, but her scream followed him, a sound so filled with agony that he collapsed. When he dared to return at dawn, Ratna was gone. All that remained was a circle of scorched earth and a faint stain that looked like blood. Back in my own home, I began to feel uneasy. The journal's final pages seemed to emanate cold. At midnight, my lights flickered and I heard faint whispers. I dismissed it as a draft until I saw a figure in the mirror behind me. her face half hidden by shadows, her eyes glinting with hunger. I spun around. No one stood there. My heart pounded as I hurried to lock every door and window. The whispers grew louder, chanting a language I didn't understand. The room's temperature dropped so sharply that my breath turned to mist. I realized Ratna's fate might not have been sealed in the forest, but in the pages I now held. Determined to end whatever curse lingered, I researched the incantations in the journal. I found an old shaman who agreed to perform a cleansing ritual at midnight. As we prepared, he warned me, "The devil you invite will claw his way back into the world." At the ritual site, a circle of salt under the open sky, we began to chant. The wind howled and shadows twisted around us. Suddenly, a figure stepped from the darkness. A silhouette of Ratna, her eyes hollow. The shaman shouted a protection charm. I felt a force slam into me. I barely held on to consciousness as I saw Ratna's lips move, whispering, "Satisfy me." The shaman's ritual intensified. He drew symbols in the air with a burning stick, reciting ancient verses. Ratna's image flickered between beauty and bestial horror. She lunged toward me, mouth agape, as if to bite. The shaman held his ground, chanting louder, and I poured salt around the perimeter. Ratna shrieked, her form dissolving into a shadow that retreated into the night. When the final words echoed, the wind died instantly. The forest fell silent. I collapsed to my knees, trembling. The shaman approached and placed a hand on my shoulder. "She is bound for now," he said. "But remember, her hunger is eternal." In the days that followed, I couldn't sleep. Every midnight, I felt her presence at my door, whispering. Mirrors in my home warped, reflecting a twisted version of myself. My dreams were filled with Ratna's pleading eyes, begging for mercy. I tried burning the journal, but its pages resisted flame, turning to ash only to reveal fresh writing. One line appeared as if written by invisible ink. "I will return when the moon is full." I checked the calendar. 2 weeks until the next full moon. Panic gripped me. Had I truly ended her, or merely delayed her return? On the night of the full moon, I refused to stay indoors. Armed with the shaman's amulet and a dagger blessed with salt, I went to the banyan tree where Ratna vanished. Under silver light, the air rippled, and I heard her seductive voice. "You cannot deny me." The trunk of the tree split, revealing a gaping maw of darkness. With trembling hands, I held up the amulet and recited the protective chant the shaman taught me. The darkness recoiled, and from its center emerged Ratna, half human, half shadow, her eyes blazing. She whispered my name, then lunged. I stabbed the dagger into the ground between us, scattering salt. She recoiled, shrieking in agony. Ratna's form flickered, revealing both her and the demonic presence entwined. She begged me to release her, to let her satiate the devil's hunger. The amulet glowed with a pale light as I repeated the chant. Ratna screamed, "I loved him. He gave me life." The ground shook and the banyan tree's roots writhed like serpents. I hesitated, torn by pity. But the journal's warning echoed. Trust no promise made at midnight. Clutching the amulet, I mustered every ounce of willpower and uttered the final verse. A brilliant flash engulfed Ratna, and then silence. Her scream faded. The tree's trunk sealed itself, as though nothing had happened. I returned home as dawn broke, drained and haunted. The amulet's light dimmed, and the journal lay closed on my desk, its pages blank. I watched as the first sunlight crept across the floor, and with trembling fingers, I buried the journal deep beneath the banyan tree, hoping it would remain hidden forever. Yet sometimes, at the stroke of midnight, I swear I hear Ratna's whispers carried on the wind. Remember me. I know she lives in the shadows, forever hungry, forever searching for someone to satisfy her. And I fear that one day, curiosity will claim another soul at midnight.